Previously on Faking Michael. We heard the backstory of Casio track co-writer James Port.
James was a MJ fanatic. In his dorm room was always MJ paraphernalia. I mean, everything MJ.
And we heard that in 1999, Port began working with Michael.
He met Michael through the Hit Factory, and then Michael took a liking to him.
We heard about Eddie Casio's longtime friendship with Michael.
He would just come up and enjoy family dinners and just be part of the family.
And we heard that with Michael's encouragement, Casio and Port started working together.
You should get with James and you guys start writing. And that's what we did. We started writing together.
We also heard that in the fall of 2007, while working on the 25th anniversary edition of his best-selling album, Thriller, Michael and his 3 children stayed with the Casio family for 2.5 months, a period during which Eddie Casio and James Port would later claim that they co-wrote and recorded an entire album of unreleased songs with Michael.
He came ready to work, and that's what we did. We spent long hours working in the studio, recording.
And we heard that it was during this same period of time, while Michael was staying with the Casio family, that the world first became aware of Jason Malachi, when TMZ published a story about a mysterious song called Mamacita, which had been mistaken for a new song by the King of Pop.
New Jacko Tracko?
96.1 KISS.
An iHeart radio station.
Here's the question, so what's the answer? Will you be my girl forever?
Pittsburgh's 96.1 KISS FM claims they have a new song from Michael Jackson called Mamacita, where the gloved one rocks out, sometimes in Spanish. Que ridiculo. TMZ couldn't confirm with Michael's rep if the new track is authentic, but Jacko hasn't released an original song in years and is overdue for a comeback. Either the King of Pop is on a mission to reclaim his throne, or some other smooth criminal is pulling a fast one.
Published on the 6th of September 2007, the Mamacita story created confusion in the Michael Jackson fan community, with many fans believing that it was indeed a new song by Michael. But shortly after the story was published, Michael's manager issued a statement telling TMZ that the pop star had not released any new music. Meanwhile, the actual singer of Mamacita, Jason Malachi, remained temporarily silent, allowing the track and the confusion surrounding who sang it to continue to spread. So who is Jason Malachi? Let's take a deep dive into Jason's backstory to find out.
Well, actually, Malachi, I read scripture a lot, and it's the last book of the Old Testament, and it means my messenger. And I believe, I was put on earth to give a message, and it's through my music. So that's Malachi, just fits me perfect.
In what seems to be a recurring theme throughout this podcast series, Malachi is a fictitious alias used by Jason, whose real name is Jason Edward Cupetta. Born in the American state of Maryland in 1980, Jason is part of an Italian-American family originally from Brooklyn in New York. Since the beginning of 2007, Jason has served as a deputy sheriff at the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office. Yes, for the past 15 years, Jason has worked in law enforcement. But his dream job was always to make it in the entertainment business, a dream that Jason says he's been chasing since a very young age.
Well, I've been performing, entertaining, I would say even since I was 5. I sing, I dance, I write. I'm trying to get signed with a major label. Long term, I'm looking to, act, produce, and just be, an overall entrepreneur in this entertainment industry.
According to Jason, people have always labelled him as being obsessed with Michael Jackson. Jason recalls that all through middle school, he sang and danced like Michael, studying his every vocal and every move. He recalls that he copped a lot of flack for it, but according to Jason, he didn't really care because he loved Michael Jackson. But as he got older and began taking his music career more seriously, the similarities between his voice and Michael's became an obstacle.
It's been a double-edged sword throughout my career. It has been. It's been very good shock value at first. Ever since I was young, going in the studio, literally the producers, they hear my voice and they're like, you sound so much like MJ, so how can we pitch this? And I try to explain to them. I was like, look, put me on stage. You'll see it's me. This is not a gimmick. Like, this is how I sound, but it's my own music.
In the year 2000, at the age of 20, Jason met Tony Curtis, a singer, songwriter and producer based out of Baltimore, a 40-minute drive from where Jason lived at the time. Curtis recalls that the first time he heard Jason's voice, the Michael Jackson flavour was obvious. But while there were strong similarities between Jason's voice and Michael's, Curtis identified several distinct differences, including Jason's vibrato, which was faster and less controlled than Michael's, as well as Jason's inability to stay on pitch.
He sounds like he had the potential to sing like Michael, but he's tone deaf. He is very tone deaf. And with Jason, he's just completely out of pitch, and you don't get anything out of the way he expressed or the way he delivered his lines.
Curtis recalls that when they started working together, in order to help Jason get the best out of his vocal performance, Curtis would actually record himself singing the songs first, so that Jason could listen to his vocal delivery and copy it.
He has no idea how to structure melodies or vocals, which was the reason why I sung the vocals first, then I had him sing the vocals over. I sung all of his demos first, then he sung them.
Curtis and Jason ultimately formed a friendship and went on to work together for several years, during which time Curtis recorded a charity single called I Can Make It. And since they were working together at the time, Jason recalls that Curtis invited him to feature on the track.
We had a lot of artists that were from the Baltimore or Washington, D.C. area kind of come together and do like a collaborative effort. And I mean, I was like the amateur involved. Everyone else was like professional careers. I was just honored to be a part of the project.
Don't ever let them say there's nothing you can't do. I know that you can make it.
Curtis recalls that when he sent I Can Make It to radio stations, everyone kept asking how he managed to get Michael Jackson on the track.
I told the people at the radio station that it was a friend of mine. I'm like, you know, it's a Caucasian kid, you know, and nobody believed it.
Despite making it clear that it was Jason, not Michael, Curtis says that radio stations weren't forthcoming with that information, instead allowing their listeners to believe that the track featured the king of pop.
So when the radio station played the record, they tried to make it like it was Michael. And they was like, well, you know, if you don't say it's not Michael, you know, and you don't comment on it, then people can come to whatever conclusion they want. I'm like, yeah, but I'd rather not do that. You know, I'm like, I'm trying to, you know, do something with this kid. I don't want somebody thinking it's Michael on the record, and then when it comes back, it's like, oh, I did it with that intent. That's not how I work.
Jason claims that he had a similar experience when he and Tony Curtis met with Suge Knight, the infamous co-founder of Death Row Records. According to Jason, Suge wanted to release one of the tracks that Curtis had produced for him. Jason also says that Suge even had a marketing plan as to how they'd get every radio station in America to play the track.
He had like this brilliant marketing plan. He was like, we'll release the record. Every radio station in the country will be playing it, but we're not going to tell anyone who it is initially. Then we're going to produce this awesome music video, and then we'll just debut that way. And I thought it was a brilliant marketing plan.
According to Jason, Suge went as far as to offer him a record deal, but that in the end, for a variety of reasons, Jason chose not to take the deal, and Suge's supposed marketing plan was never to be.
They actually wanted me to move to LA, and at the time, I wasn't ready to make that move. So I didn't take the deal, but there was no hard feelings, and I mean, it was an amazing experience I had out there in LA.
Jason recalls that for the next few years, he continued to pursue a career in music, but that after his meeting with Suge Knight, opportunities had become hard to come by. By the beginning of 2007, Jason had reached what he describes as a low point in his career. Music simply wasn't paying the bills. And so he got a job in law enforcement, joining the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office. But as we heard earlier in this episode, on September 6, 2007, while Michael Jackson was staying at the Casio family home in New Jersey, Jason shot to 15 minutes of fame when one of his songs was mistaken for a new song by the King of Pop. Investigative journalist AJ Duggar, who was an active member of the Michael Jackson fan community at the time, recalls the moment he first heard Jason's music.
It was the summer of 2007. I was a senior in college. And then there was this song called Mamacita that just took over the internet. Everybody was saying it was Michael Jackson.
And before long, the track was being played by radio stations across America. Jason recalls.
So it went regional and then even went over to LA and started spreading like wildfire. However, the reason why it was spreading like wildfire is everyone was saying that it was the new Michael Jackson record.
Jason says that he and his team tried to clarify that the track was his, not Michael's.
My camp was trying to like clarify, say, no, it's not Michael, this is Jason Malachi, but continue playing it, please.
But that's not quite how producer Tony Curtis remembers it.
When I heard that the record was leaked out, I called Jason. I was like, man, did you hear this Mamacita record? People thinking it's Michael Jackson. He was like, yeah. I'm like, man, you need to make a statement and let people know that the record is you. You know, and he was like, well, I just want to see where it go at first.
With Jason preferring to keep the confusion going, Curtis, who wrote, produced, and sang background vocals on Mamacita, says that he decided to take matters into his own hands.
So when I saw that it was out, I made a statement about that. You know, I'm like, this record is not Michael Jackson. It's Jason Malachi. I produced the record and I wrote the song.
Then, on September 21, 2007, 2 weeks after they first wrote about Mamacita, TMZ reported the development.
New Jacko Tracko, done by a white guy.
Hey, what's going on? This is Jason Malachi.
Believe it or not, this is the guy who fooled everybody into thinking that his song was MJ's latest, including a Pittsburgh radio station, and pretty much anyone who heard it. His name is Jason Malachi, an Italian-American guy from Silver Spring, Maryland, who just happens to sound exactly like Michael Jackson. On his MySpace page, he's got 3 or 4 tracks available for listening. And let's just say they're all heavily influenced by Jacko, breathy falsetto and all.
Journalist AJ Duggar recalls how a Memphis-based radio station reacted when they learned that the new Michael Jackson track that they'd been playing wasn't actually Michael at all.
In Memphis, where I'm from Memphis, they played Don't Walk Away. I think it was K97, and it blew up big. People really thought it was Michael Jackson.
This is K97 FM.
I got my baby telling her I'm on my way.
And eventually the radio station pulled it. When they found out it wasn't Michael, it was Jason Malachi.
And at that point, Jason finally revealed himself.
Just to clear up all the doubt, this is my song, Don't Walk Away. Gonna be released on my debut album, April 2008. Don't you walk away, yeah, baby. I want you to stay. I want you to stay. So don't you walk away. Oh please, oh baby, stay. Don't you go walking, baby.
The mystery is solved. Jason Malachi in the Congregate Studios, y'all. 647-3688. We want to get some listeners to give us a call. We can answer maybe a few questions and stuff. We're in the studio with Jason Malachi. Do you get tired of folks telling you sound like Michael Jackson?
Not really. I mean, it's actually a compliment to me, so I appreciate it. So,
what can we look forward to on your new album? It's not out yet. You have these singles that have been released. Don't Walk Away. We're also playing a song called Let Me Let Go, which is, everybody think that's Michael Jackson, but that's you.
Yeah, that's my song too. Everyone, it's crazy, but yeah, that's me though.
That is amazing. Some of the producers and artists.
And while radio stations across America were playing Jason's songs, thinking that they were Michael, people in other countries were having similar experiences. One fan on an online discussion board wrote that a number of Jason's songs had been labelled as new Michael Jackson songs as part of a bootleg album being sold in Sri Lanka. Here in Australia, I heard one of Jason's songs in a store at a local shopping mall. Knowing full well that it was Jason, I approached the woman behind the counter and asked what music she was playing, and she told me that it was a new song by Michael Jackson. When I told her that it wasn't Michael, but a 27-year-old deputy sheriff in the US who goes by the name Jason Malachi, she refused to believe me. Journalist AJ Duggar recalls that while the differences between Jason's voice and Michael's were clear to most of Michael's dedicated fans, some people simply couldn't tell them apart. In fact, some people even believed that Jason Malachi was Michael Jackson. AJ explains.
When Malachi first came out, people thought he was Michael Jackson using an alias. Because I remember there were these big fights and rows on Facebook, these arguments, like the claws came out. People really swore that Jason Malachi wasn't the real guy, that he was Michael Jackson playing a prank on us.
Adding to the confusion was the fact that a number of Jason's songs started appearing on YouTube with footage of Michael's iconic performances and videos, and with Michael's name in the description. And as he'd done when Mamacita first leaked, Jason's former producer, Tony Curtis, confronted Jason, telling him that he should have the videos taken down and stop allowing people to believe that his songs were Michael.
When I start seeing the videos come up with all Jason's songs and Michael's Blood on the Dance Floor or Michael's Smooth Criminal or Michael's Keep It in the Closet, I warned him. I'm like, whatever you thinking, do not play around with the Michael Jackson thing. Don't play around with Michael's likeness. You got to get on top of this. You got to stop people from thinking that these songs are Michael, and you got to contact YouTube, take those videos down, that has Michael's videos with your songs, man. I'm like, I did this work, and I'm like, I don't want to be involved in anything like that. I don't want nothing to do with it, because it's going to bite you in the ass, man. I'm telling you.
Jason's response, according to Curtis,
oh, no, I ain't had nothing to do with that. Maybe the fans did it, so I'm just going to let it go and see how it goes. I'm like, dog, no, you can't work like that. If you have talent, let your talent speak for itself. And if you believe in your talent, then you should be able to pull off what Michael pulled off for his talent. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so now you've got the backstory on Jason Malachi. Let's get back to the real Michael Jackson. In late September 2007, while Jason was enjoying his 15 minutes of fame, and while Michael was staying at the Casio family home, the pop star kicked off a planned celebration for the 25th anniversary of his best-selling album, Thriller, by doing an exclusive photo shoot and interview with Ebony magazine.
The return of a determined icon. A rare sight, Michael Jackson posing to his classics at New York City's Brooklyn Museum.
Twist out, yep.
At 49, he's still got the untouchable dance moves, doing it for Ebony magazine, his first U.S. cover story in a decade. Tomorrow, we'll have the King of Pop in his own words. 25 years after Thriller, Michael's most intimate interview in years.
In the Ebony interview, Jackson not only reflected on the making and success of Thriller, but also spoke about the future, confirming that he was indeed working on new music and and that he'd been spending a lot of time in the studio. When asked which new artists he was impressed by, Jackson said that he thought that R&B star Ne-Yo was a wonderful songwriter. In fact, Ne-Yo was submitting songs for Jackson's new album, and shortly after his interview with Ebony, Jackson actually met with Ne-Yo in New York. Ne-Yo recalls.
Yes, I'm currently submitting songs for Michael Jackson's new project. Don't know when it's coming out. Really not much else I can say about it other than I have had conversations with the man. I've actually met him. You know, we talked about where he wants to go this time and everything. And the key thing he was saying is to keep it very hush-hush. He don't want no song titles coming out, no nothing. He wants the world to be shocked and surprised when he comes back out.
In the first week of November 2007, after meeting with Ne-Yo in New York, and after staying in the Casio family's New Jersey basement for 2.5 months, Jackson and his 3 children packed their bags and flew to LA. Shortly after arriving in LA, Jackson relocated to Vegas, where he worked with R&B star Akon on music for the 25th anniversary edition of Thriller, and on material for his new album. And it was at that time that Akon introduced Jackson to a song we've heard several times throughout this series, called Hold My Hand. Akon recalls.
Hold My Hand actually came about when I was doing the re-release for his Thriller album. And we were sitting down talking about concepts for his new album itself. And at that moment, that's when I was like, yo, I think I may have the record for you. And I played him Hold My Hand. And he heard it, and off top, he's like, oh, this is it, this is amazing. We got to get in the studio and do this record. And ultimately, that's what ended up happening, you know? He finished all the vocals, added some incredible ad-libs and everything to it, and we just made it more of an MJ record with the MJ touch, you know? And believe me, that was a big touch.
We better off being together.
Once he laid it, it was out of here, you know?
In miserable alone.
It was rare for Jackson to put his voice on new material during his final years, making Hold My Hand one of the last new songs the pop star ever recorded. Recording engineer Mark Exit Goodchild, who recorded Jackson's vocals on Hold My Hand, says that despite the fact that he'd rarely recorded during the final years of his life, the pop star's vocal performance gave him and Akon goosebumps, and that Jackson was by far the best recording artist that they'd ever worked with.
He was singing his butt off, and I looked at Akon and we're like, it sounds amazing. And we already had goosebumps, and it wasn't just because it was Michael Jackson, because he was singing his butt off, but he was so well practiced and so good at singing that his chops and delivery were way better than anybody we've ever dealt with.
By all accounts, Jackson was very proud of Hold My Hand, excitedly playing it for family and friends in early 2008 to get their opinion on the track. According to Akon, he and Jackson intended to release Hold My Hand as the lead single for both of their new albums. But things didn't go as they had planned. Akon recalls.
And the record, like 3 months after we recorded, ended up on the internet, which was devastating for both of us because we wanted to, we wasn't even fully complete with the record at the time. There was a lot more that we had to do to it. So we were really highly disappointed when that actually happened because we felt like it cheated the audience from what we were actually, putting together for them.
Okay, so now that we know what Michael Jackson was doing between the end of 2007 and the beginning of 2008, let's turn our attention back to James Port and Eddie Casio, who during this same period had been working together again on songs for their famous Friend. It should be noted at this point that when Thriller 25 was released in February of 2008, Casio and Port's production company, Angelicsson Productions, was credited on 2 of the bonus tracks, the same 2 tracks from Jackson's handwritten notes, which we heard about briefly in episode 6. It should also be noted that throughout 2008, as he'd done over the years, James Port registered 2 more song collections with the US Copyright Office, one on which Eddie Casio was also named as a co-author. As part of this investigation, I flew 10,000 miles from Brisbane, Australia to Washington, D.C. in the United States, where I went to the US Copyright Office on several occasions with my best friend and co-researcher, James. James and I went to the US Copyright Office to listen to and document every single song in every registration that Casio and Port have ever made, and you'll hear our most relevant discoveries throughout the remainder of this series. It's worth noting at this point that the reason people file copyright registrations is to establish a verifiable record of the date and content of the work they have created, so that in the event of a legal claim, infringement, or plagiarism, the copyright owner can produce a copy of the work from an official government source. It's also worth noting that the file attached to that registration should be the most complete version of the work to exist at the time of the registration. Keep that in mind when considering that James Port and Eddie Casio claim that Michael Jackson recorded the Casio tracks in the fall of 2007. The first of the 2 song collections registered by James Port in 2008 is called Focus Compilation. Filed on the 5th of March 2008, Focus Compilation contains 7 songs, including Keep Your Head Up, one of the 12 tracks that Port and Eddie Casio sold to Jackson's estate in 2010, a year after the pop star's death. The version of Keep Your Head Up in the 2008 registration is lyrically and structurally the same as the version that was sold to the estate in 2010. The only major difference is that the vocals in the 2008 version are sung by Port. My research partner James and I could identify Port's voice because we knew it from the song Exotic Dancer, which Port had released under the Bobby Ewing alias years prior.
She ain't down with the 9 to 5. Little shorty wanna stay alive. Wanna take that American pie.
Another track in Focus Compilation is called Need Your Love. This track was not sold to the estate following Jackson's death, but it was being written for the pop star during his life. In fact, there is a first-person reference to the name Michael in the song's lyrics, which are again sung by Port. Another track that Port included in the registration is called Hot, which is an early version of what ultimately became the Casio track Breaking News. The track starts with the words "Give Me a Beat," a reference to the Janet Jackson songs Nasty
Give me a beat!
and Feedback,
Give me a beat!
and sounds like something you'd find on the Blackout album by Britney Spears. At the time Port registered Hot, he clearly intended it for a female singer, not for Michael Jackson. The track is written from the perspective of an attractive woman who is the object of the sexual desires of multiple men, and once again, Port sings the vocals. And despite the fact that they were copyrighted 4 months after Jackson left the Casio family home, where Jackson is alleged to have co-written and recorded with Eddie Casio and James Port, neither Jackson nor Casio is credited as a co-writer on any of the Focus Compilation tracks. 3.5 weeks after filing the registration for Focus Compilation, on March 30, 2008, Port filed another registration called JPEC Collection. JPEC stands for James Port Eddie Casio, and both men are credited on this registration. In fact, this is the first registration that both Casio and Port appear on together in 3 years, since 2005. The JPEC collection includes just 2 songs, All Right and Ready to Win, both of which are among the 12 tracks that were sold to the estate in the aftermath of Jackson's death. And despite being filed 5 months after Jackson is alleged to have recorded the tracks, the pop star is again not credited on this registration, and the vocals on the tracks are again sung by Port. While Casio and Port continued working on songs for Jackson, Jason Malachi had been working on music of his own. By this point, many of Michael Jackson's fans had become disillusioned with Jason, dismissing him as a wannabe whose only claim to fame was tricking people into believing his voice was Michael's. Jason explains.
Since the 2007 Mamacita explosion, it's been like, oh, you're trying to take his place, or you're trying to be Michael, and that's not the case at all. I have such admiration for the man. You know, he's the king of pop. He always will be. There'll never be anyone that comes close. But I'm my own artist. I have my own stuff. I'm not a tribute artist. I'm not an impersonator. I never have been, and I never will be. So that's not me.
And while Jason had become a polarizing figure among Jackson's fans, journalist AJ Duggar recalls that he actually liked Jason's music and even began listening to it while he awaited new music from Michael.
So anyway, I was impressed because Michael wasn't releasing any music. He was chilling. So with this Jason Malachi floating around, I could scratch that Michael Jackson itch with Jason Malachi. His album came out. It was called Revelation. I got the CD.
AJ recalls that as well as supporting his music, he also befriended Jason online.
And I used to talk to him on MySpace. You know, that's what I like about social media. Like, people will generally, they will respond to you. And I would ask him questions. I'm like, who wrote the songs and what are you working on next? Are you going to tour? You know, he would always write me back. We just stayed in touch and got along well. We were friends on Facebook. I was friends with his wife on Facebook at one time too. Like, we became pretty friendly.
Okay, so that's enough about Jason for the time being. Now, let's focus our attention back on Michael Jackson, who by March of 2009 was finally poised to make his long-awaited return to the spotlight.
Michael Jackson's touchdown in the UK. Speculation is going into overdrive. The King of Pop might be about to announce a comeback tour in London. It's after it was revealed he's scheduled to attend a news conference at the O2 Arena on Thursday, where he's making a special announcement.
These will be my final show performances in London. I'll be performing the songs my fans want to hear. This is really it. This is the final curtain call. This is it, and see you in July.
By the time Michael announced his This Is It concert series, it had been 12 years since the pop star's last tour, and the demand for tickets was unprecedented. In a matter of hours, a record 50 shows was sold out, and the King of Pop was back.
Final curtain call for the King of Pop still reigns, at least for the hundreds of fans that turned up at London's O2 Arena.
Dates have been extended to
Fans old and young have bought around 1 million tickets, snapped up in just hours.
Tickets are already being sold on eBay, with one optimistic person hoping to make £50,000.
Rehearsals for the shows were set to take place back in LA, with the concerts themselves to be staged at the O2 Arena in London between July 2009 and March 2010. Being that the concerts would span a total of 9 months, Jackson had planned to rent a private estate in the English countryside, where he would live with his 3 children. Jackson also planned to build a recording studio on the property, so that he could continue working on new music on his days off between the shows. Recording engineer Michael Prince, who was also travelling to London to work on both the concerts and new music with Jackson, recalls.
Michael told me that once we got to the UK and got settled in, I was going to bring all my gear over to his house, and on our days off, when he had the energy and I did, then we were going to continue to work on new songs.
Eddie Cascio recalls that he and James Port also intended to join Jackson in London, where they planned to continue working on the songs they'd been writing for their famous friend.
You know, I was setting up to go out to London, and I was bringing my gear with me because a lot of those songs, we're probably going to continue working on and working on more.
And so, in preparation for their move to London, James Port began polishing up some of the tracks that he and Eddie had planned to present to Jackson. In late May 2009, Port sent 4 tracks to a Brooklyn-based producer and mixing engineer named Angelo Montrone. The tracks that Port sent to Montrone included Keep Your Head Up, Need Your Love, and Ready to Win, all 3 of which we heard about when discussing Port's 2008 copyright registrations. The 4th track that Port sent to Montrone was called Water, a track that prior to June 2009 hadn't appeared in any of Port or Cassio's digital paper trail. And as with their previous copyright registrations, the vocals on all 4 tracks were sung by Port. When my research partner James and I spoke to Montrone, he told us that Port instructed him to make the tracks sound as good as possible, because the better they sounded, the better their chances of getting Michael to record them. According to Montrone's records, he submitted several mixes of the tracks to Port between the 3rd of June and the 17th of June 2009. And once Montrone had submitted his mixes, the tracks, with Port's vocals, were one step closer to being presented to Jackson. But then, on the 25th of June 2009, merely a week after Montrone had submitted his final mix,
Yes, sir. I need an ambulance as soon as possible, sir. We have a gentleman here that needs help, and he's not breathing, and we're trying to pump him, but he's not.
Okay, how old is he?
He's 50 years old, sir.
50, okay. He's unconscious, he's not breathing?
Yes, he's not breathing, sir. He's not responding to CPR or anything, sir.
Oh, okay.
He's pumping his chest, but he's not responding to anything, sir. Please.
in the next episode of Faking Michael.
Michael Jackson, the pop music and dance innovator, passed away yesterday.
Thank you for submitting your registration with the U.S. Copyright Office.
This was a family that my uncle loved and my cousins loved.
For information on copyright registration, press 1.
So if you upload a song that's not widely known, you say you Michael Jackson did it, we will make the registration.
The King of Pop is said to have left behind a mountain of material.
So there could be a whole new life just from these songs alone.
He has vocals on?
Nah, it's my vocal reference, and it was meant for him.
Ironically, Breaking News is the title of this never-heard-before new song by Michael Jackson.
And from the first note, you know something's wrong.
I'm like, damn, that's not Michael, that's Jason. And I'm like, so how did he pull that one off?
The only thing he said was, I can't confirm or deny anything right now.
I told him, I'm like, you don't have to play no games with me, you know, because I know without a shadow of a doubt it's Jason. I worked with Jason 10 years. I know everything about his voice, and I would be willing to bet anything on it.
Faking Michael is a production of Oath Media. which is researched, written and narrated by me, Damien Shields. Original score, sound design and mixing by Dan Villalobos. Additional research by James Allais and Jamin Bull, and the teams at the MJ Cast and A Truth Untold. Artwork by Stephen Ward. If you enjoy the Faking Michael podcast, please consider rating, reviewing and sharing it. Faking Michael is an independent piece of investigative reporting. All source material is used in a limited and transformative way for the purposes of commentary, criticism, demonstration and education in accordance with fair use guidelines. Some of that material has been edited for clarity and time. If you'd like to contact the makers of this podcast, support our cause, or order a copy of the Faking Michael book, please visit our website at fakingmichael.com.